When I started researching about my INFJ personality, I came across a number of different stereotypes that always seem to come up, especially from people who aren't INFJs themselves and may not know one. I'm sure most types have stereotypes about them, and though some are true, many won't fit in because we are all individual people, and having the same personality as someone else doesn't mean we're all the same, or even similar sometimes. Our upbringing and environment play a big role too. So I wanted to list a few stereotypes that I've come across about INFJs and whether they fit in with me and what I think about myself. You may have different views to me, especially on a few, as I know a lot do agree with some of these stereotypes. I am basing these on my own personal experiences only, and I don't know any other INFJs in real life yet, so I can't get their perspective too. First up is probably the most common one I've come across, sort of a defining behaviour for INFJs. It's the door slam. It's basically what INFJs are supposed to do when they reach a point in a relationship where they realise it's toxic, or just not healthy for them to stay friends, partners, or whatever with another person. So they just delete them out of their lives suddenly. I know lots of people say they have done this, and it seems to be a common INFJ behaviour, but I just can't fathom the idea of ever being that rude to someone. I have had relationships that have been toxic, but I've never been able to door slam them. Instead, I kept holding on to the potential I could see in them, and I kept doing my best to help this other person to see it too. I'm very determined, and I find it difficult to give up on someone, because I wonder if there's going to be anyone else who will help them if I don't. We all deserve love and respect, and I just think the idea of suddenly disappearing without explaining yourself do not uphold those values. I have gradually let people go over time, normally friends that I was always the one that would initiate conversations with, or the ones that would only ever come to me when they needed pretty much a therapy session so they could just dump their problems on me, get some advice, and then disappear off until the next problem they had. But I would never door slam them. I've stopped messaging them, but if they were to contact me, I would respond. I am sensible to make sure that I'm not just a free therapist for them, that they are another human being, and they do need someone to talk to. And I know how much I appreciate having someone I can go to with my problems. I don't know, maybe the door slam is for people that feel they have no other option, or they aren't able to sit down and have a conversation about the toxicity of the relationship with that person. And I think it's something that anyone can do, not just INFJs, so I don't think it should be a defining behaviour for us. Personally, I just can't understand how I could do it. Having FE and really valuing treating everybody with respect, it just wouldn't work well with my values. Next up is being the most extroverted introvert, or being an ambivert. I used to get so confused when the only distinction between people that I knew at the time was whether they were introverted or extroverted. It's because that's so subjective, and it depends massively on where you are, how you're feeling, what you're talking about, or who you're with. But as I learned about the cognitive functions more, it made more sense. There isn't just a 50-50 split between introverts and extroverts, that everyone has both extroverted and introverted functions, and it will depend more on which function you are using primarily at the time, as to which you will be more like. My behaviour depends a lot on who I'm with and what I'm talking about predominantly. So to acquaintances and strangers, I'm likely to stay quiet, especially as the dreaded small talk often makes an appearance. I tend to find it harder to talk to people I don't know, because it seems like they only talk to be polite, they don't actually care. So for example, if someone had asked me how I was, and I said I was really stressed out, having a really hard time with something, and could I get some advice from them, they'd probably look horrified, because all they wanted me to say was, "I'm fine, how are you?" in response. But when I'm with people I know, I can be a lot more extroverted. Often at home I talk a lot more than my ENTJ partner does, and when we are discussing a topic I am interested in, I can go on for hours without feeling tired. I think this is partly to do with my NI and SE. When I don't know someone well, I have to use my SE a lot to discern the correct topics to talk about, their body language, how should I respond, etc. And it's not a comfortable place for me to stay in. It requires constant assessing and taking in new information from my environment, which can get tiring. However, when I'm with someone I know, I don't need to worry about whether I'm talking about a weird topic, because they know and accept me. I feel more free to spend less time worrying about the outside cues, and more time in my dominant NI, actually focused on the topic we are discussing. So although INFJs overall could be classed as extroverted introverts, or ambiverts, I think it's more realistic to break it down into situations. Someone that only spends time with people they know is more likely to seem extroverted compared to someone who only spends their time around strangers and acquaintances. But at the end of the day, we do all need a lot of time to recharge, so we are still introverts at heart. Next is our supposed psychic abilities. Although no INFJ I've found actually thinks we have psychic abilities, I guess it's just a simple way for other types to explain it without actually understanding us. Our NI doesn't mean we know the future. It just means we're very good at putting pieces together to form a conclusion, often needing less puzzle pieces than other types do before we can decipher what the picture is. For me, I research a lot. I know a ridiculous amount of information about completely random topics sometimes, and my NI uses that stored information as I go about my life. So I can be given a little bit of information from an outside source, and my NI is quickly able to slot it into the correct location and to work out the rest before coming back to me with an answer. The answer isn't always right, but it is always based on some outside information that comes in first. So it can't be psychic. I will have picked up on someone's body language, their tone of voice, facial expressions, noticed there are less cars on the road, the weather's slightly different, or whatever, and I'm often able to explain how I've come to my conclusion very clearly when I'm asked. My partner likes to think I can read his mind about certain things, like knowing what he wants for dinner without him asking, or knowing what he wants to talk about when all he's said so far is, But I think it's because I have a lot of stored information about him. We have been together for a while now, so I can pick up on subtle nuances in his facial expressions or body language, and any patterns I've noticed, and I'm usually able to come to the correct conclusion. Although it seems cool to be thought of as a psychic, much like most magic tricks, once it's explained it doesn't seem all that special and exciting, but I still think it's a good quality to have. And finally is one I do find quite funny, being detail-oriented and thus extremely neat and tidy. I can't speak for anyone else, but my external environment is not my top priority. That involves me using my SE, and I'd much rather stay inside my own head, thank you very much. I am organised in myself. I know what to do and when. I have meal plans for the week, my bookshelves are organised by genre, and everything has a place of sorts. But it would be a stretch to call myself neat and tidy. Just because everything has a place doesn't mean it's ordered. All my notebooks live on my desk, but they definitely aren't arranged in a neat line. They're normally in a pile because I use them so frequently, it doesn't make sense to keep putting them back into a perfect position. I may as well just leave them where they are. My clothes live in drawers, but they aren't colour coordinated and folded perfectly. I am organised with my time, but that does not mean I'll hoover the house at a specific time each week. I think the detail-oriented part probably refers to things the INFJ deems as important. It is important to me to have my books organised in genres, because I have a lot, and I want to be able to pick up a book straight away, without having to read the blurb to decide if it's fantasy, crime, romance, or etc. I like it neat because it just looks better. I also like having my desk organised, because I spend most of my time here when I'm home. Though it doesn't necessarily have to be neat, because I know where everything is and I can access it all. It's more of a functioning neatness than a visual neatness. That probably isn't a thing, but I'm sticking with it for now. I like my environment to be neat and tidy enough that it doesn't distract me, because a very dirty, messy house would really distract me and force me into my SE to clean it, but a bit of clutter doesn't really bother me, unless it's in the way or stopping me from doing something. I guess for some people they want to have the perfect houses, but I'm just not that bothered. As long as it's functional, I'm good. Hopefully you found my take on a few of the INFJ stereotypes interesting. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my statements. Maybe I'll do some more in the future. I think it's important that other types don't just read the INFJ stereotypes and assume that we all do all of these things, because that is just not the case. But it can be hard to understand other types if you don't know anyone who is one, so I guess that's why these stereotypes exist. I think I just don't like being put in a box. Anyway, thank you for your time.